I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
He's back after 2 weeks. He was a traveling man, and he has an A job too, where he's now even more important now than he was 2 weeks ago. So a lot going on in Kyle's life. Kyle Theige back on Flagrant Howls here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this right away. I've received inquiries about my recent absence at Timberwolves podcast. I just wanted to share some personal news. I recently underwent successful hip surgery. Oh, wait, no, that was Glenn. As people know, I have a real job and recently had some good news there. So celebrated a little bit. We should be pro vacation on this podcast and in life. If you get it, use it. So I was out in Hawaii for a week, kind of scouting, getting things ready for the honeymooners themselves, Dex and his wife. So been swapping texts every day with Dex, making sure he's drinking the right stuff, staying away from the road to Hana, which almost killed him.
Can I say, so I've been to Maui once, and it was fantastic, and you've been to Maui a bajillion times. And so I would have told him, hey, I don't want to infringe on but everyone told us, don't do the road to Hana. It's just kind of like a waste of a day, and it's just a lot. But I withheld that information. And then he told me that you also withheld that information from him. And so they did the road to Hana, and he said the trip's been amazing. The only thing we would have done differently is the road to Hana. It just felt like a long, winding, white-knuckle drive that was very nerve-wracking to see some views we could have seen anywhere on the island.
I'm not going to throw our guy under the bus because he is having the best time down there, shirtless, just drinking. I don't know. I think I kind of did say, if you're going to go to Hana, make sure you pack a lot of ginger candy because it is a death trip. But the island of Maui is popping again. They're still recovering from those fires, which were obviously just super tragic. But if you do go to Maui, I was in Kauai, but if you go to Maui, there's so much to do that it's just, you probably shouldn't have time to try to bare knuckle a one-lane drive around a cliff.
Dude,
that
it's
could
wild.
kill you.
So we went up. The locals had told us to actually go up around the northwest part of the island. There's no tourists up there, but even up there, it's it's one lane, white knuckle one lane, and then there might be another car coming a quarter of a mile down the road.
Correct.
And one of you has to back up to a point where the other one can go through, and it was fun, by the way. I enjoyed that. It was white knuckle, but it was exhilarating. I might go off the cliff at any time. It's crazy.
I also love the Dex, and that we can actually, talk about what we talk about here, but was learning about the time zones back there of, Sundays, football, 8 a.m. And if you're thinking that sucks, no, it doesn't suck because it's just you wake up, you have breakfast, mimosa, and you just watch football, the witching hours at 10:45 a.m. and by noon, you're like, all right, let me go to the beach. So I hope Dex is having a good time, but I'm back. And I have no regrets about taking time off. And speaking of no regrets, I wanted to talk to you about Karl-Anthony Towns at some point.
No, let's start the show there after we just false started the show here. But I want to shout out Brixworth here near Target Center. Brixworth on board here at Score North throughout the fall. Couple blocks away from Target Center in the North Loop. They've got the OG Burnsville location too, but the North Loop location, which has incredible Detroit-style pizza, some of the best dry rub wings with a bunch of different creative dry rub seasonings you're going to find. Great place for home games, to pregame, postgame, bring your friends. And for away games, show up, group of friends, belly up. The game's going to be on one of the TVs. They even have the signature Nas Reed Hazy IPA at Brixworth. So stop in, super close to Target Center, and even has some cheaper parking options too, where you can stop by, eat, and then go to the game and then come back. So Brixworth, we appreciate their partnership here on Flagrant Howls. So, I mean, we've been texting and stuff about the Wolves, but I'm just gonna clear the floor. I feel like people were really mad at me for what I said yesterday. Now, we have a segment every week. We brought this over from Purple Daily. Mm-hmm. Where we deliver our hottest Wolves takes. So granted, the takes in that show are a little they're a little turned up, they're a little hotter. But I stand by what I said, which is I have zero regrets about the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. Hey, awesome that he's playing really well in Toronto, but there's a bunch of logical reasons why the Wolves made that trade. I have no reason to look sideways at Tim Connolly And so awesome. Congrats, Karl-Anthony Towns. But the Timberwolves, I think short-term and long-term, are going to be in a really good position. If you want to fight me for like 30 minutes now, let's duke it out. We can do it. But go ahead.
No, we dabble in media a little bit, but I just want to say, as someone who is on the payroll, like the idea that it's clickbait or that you're doing it for views, buddy, the check's clear for me and a lot of people at this company the same way every month. So whatever you think with your tinfoil hat, sometimes you just got to get a little spicy. The Wolves had a whole week off, and unless you wanted to do a top 100 update, there's not much else to do. So I will say, chose an odd time to do it because, again, he had just come off a very good Raptors performance. Yeah. Then you do the pod. However, I don't know if you watched Knicks Hawks last night, but I was pretty sure the Knicks might have gotten booed off the court a little bit as Trae Young was doing the dice roll at the logo, and Karl and I think Mikal Bridges were a team worse, like minus 15. So in terms of like talking about the trade, I mean, it's so layered, right? Like I don't disagree. I think you thought I was going to fight you. I don't disagree about the no regrets part. I also think you can be bummed about it. I think you can look at what he's doing over there and being like, he is having quite possibly the best offensive season he's ever had. He had a quote recently about how he was a child in Minnesota and now he's a man or whatever. That might have just been one of those NBA Centel things. They might have made it up, but I believed it. But I also think that if any player, and you know this, any player comes to Minnesota and has a really good statistical year, pundits and critics and cynics are telling you, do it in the playoffs. Do it when it matters. So the fact that Karl's hooping in New York, that's awesome. But the pointing to the jersey after the Raptors game and like the John Stark type comments and wearing the merch, I'm happy for Karl. But let's see it in April, in May, because if that team were to flame out in the first round or not advance, past an Orlando, it's not going to be all fun and games, man. Like, it's not going to be bing bong. It's going to be bleep you.
Another layer to this, too, is, and we touched on this on the Hottest Takes episode, which we might need a better disclaimer for, I feel like.
No, I want to lean into it more. I want to be sponsored by a restaurant and just the hottest takes of the week.
So they have long-term cap issues, obviously. Like they've been in the second apron here like the last year, and even trading Cat, they had to take on close to equal salaries. So it's like they're still I think the second highest payroll in the NBA or something this year. And then Julius at $29 million, they might it's possible they just say goodbye to that and then they get some relief. But then Nickeil Alexander-Walker, if he comes back, is going to be a lot more expensive. And Naz Reid's going to be more expensive. So you really had to make a decision this last summer. Do we keep Ant and Cat together going forward? Cat, 29 years old, going to go from $50 up to $60 million duration of the contract. Or because there's such a gap in age, Cat is getting close with his body type and injury history to maybe like an age cliff, and then that contract becomes impossible to trade.
Right.
We have to make a decision now. For anyone saying, well, couldn't they have just run it back 1 year and then kick that can down the road? Okay. And then next summer, now you're trying to figure out trade Cat or not while still having negotiations with Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like, those guys might say, well, we're not going to wait around for you to figure out. Now it's all out of your control. Because if there's no trade partner or if the timing doesn't align, and this year it didn't align until the eve of the season, right? They had to make a decision between Cat and Ant and lose peripheral pieces, or clear the way to sign some of these younger peripheral pieces. And maybe it's a transition year, and maybe they make the playoffs and they don't go as far. That's what Denver did off and on for years. It's not always linear. And so it's just like people are looking at this as, it's like you traded Cat for Julius and DiVincenzo, and the only thing that matters is how they are performing in 2024-25, which, by the way, we don't even know yet because it's December 12th.
Right.
It's December 12th. And, like, you got Cat popping his jersey, beating a 7-win Raptors team that's depleted with injuries. Like, that's Cat, man. We know what Cat can do on December 9th, on February 5th. And the position he put Tim Connolly in 3 games to start the Western Conference Finals. Bro, we are in the Western Conference Finals now. This is like big boy, second time in franchise history. And you got Luka and you got Kyrie, and this is going to be a gunfight. This might go 6 or 7 games. We need all hands on deck right now. It's their 2 stars against our 2 stars and the peripheral pieces. And Cat shoots 27% in the first 3 games of that. Like, literally can't make a shot. And they're losing these games by 1, by 3, another close game in game 3. And if you're Connolly and you're weighing all the factors of like short-term, long-term, and boy, one of the things that Cat has been bad at is like living up to his regular season performance in the playoffs. But he was like pretty good in the first couple rounds. And the lasting impression is he was awful in the first 3 games of the most important series. And you're a president of basketball operations trying to figure out what to do. I think he made the right call, and I don't think there's any move you can point to in his history, Nuggets or Wolves. Like, if he had 3 awful trades on his resume, I'd be like, oh, man, here's Tim Connolly again. He's been aces across the board, and so that's part of where this is coming from, too, is like, I just trust Tim Connolly. I mean, we happen to see the board the same way with Cat. And cool, like, Cat's ripping it up with the Knicks, and that's awesome. It's December 12th. Let's take a breath for a second.
So to solidify my stance, I side with you and Judd that I have no regrets. I also think they lost the trade right now. Like that, I think that's what makes it such a lightning rod and such a fun topic is like, people probably think I'm just glazing you right now. I also think right now this has not worked out the way they thought it would. Like they're just not getting the Dante DiVincenzo that you saw his peak powers in New York a year ago, right? I mean, although I think Dante's coming on a little bit more. The Julius stuff, you know, like for every really good moment, you can highlight 3 or 4 moments where like, you know, his mental computer just froze in that second half of the Golden State second game where they kind of blow. That was about the most frustrated I've been in a loss because there's games you just lose or there's tight. I thought just kind of pissed that one down their leg. But this is also, again, a lightning rod because let's kind of throw this into the Rudy Gobert prism of when Rudy Gobert was traded for, in the moment, everyone said the Wolves lost the trade. Like, I said it. I was like,
fire Tim Connolly before the first game is played in his tenure. Yeah.
I mean, I was threatening to become a Mexican citizen. And everyone said that the Wolves lost that trade, and then for a year they kind of took a beating, kind of like they're doing now. And then it swung to, and I know there's like really smart Jazz fans that listen to these types of podcasts because they enjoyed the Rudy experience so much that they're still kind of a Rudy fan. There isn't a single person on earth right now that, and if they think it's because they're a troll, but there isn't a single person right now that can say that Utah Jazz won the Rudy Gobert trade. Because if you want to pivot again and you're like, oh, Kyle, the picks and stuff, I've always been told that when I celebrate my fandom, it's about wins and losses. And I think the Timberwolves have won twice as many games, if not more, than the Jazz since the Gobert and Mitchell kind of blow it up rebuild. So, you know, the Wolves took their lumps for a little bit and it proved to be the right deal, and they have, I don't know if Rudy's going to win Defensive Player of the Year again, but my God, is he kind of like finding himself again? There was this really cool stat where I think him and Ant have like the 3rd best kind of pick and roll chemistry right now going. First would be Towns and Jalen Brunson. So there's still some work to do, but I think Rudy and Ant are kind of finding a little more symmetry. They're finding their identity again. And then again, they won. They made it to the Western Conference Finals. So like with the Knicks stuff and the my dad texted me every night that Carl has a good game in the box score. It's like, if this was reversed, no one would care. Like, if this was reversed and we got a guy from the Knicks and he was hooping, Knicks fans would say, do it in May. So I think the same energy kind of exists to, like, Carl's having a great season. They play 6.5 guys. We'll see what they do. They don't have a ton of assets right now because of what they gave up from Mikal Bridges. So not to make this a Knicks corner, but I am with you that long-term. And I also wonder, too, and I've dabbled with this a little bit to you, but I wonder internally what Tim Connolly and Matt Lloyd and all those people thought about last year. Like, we externally think that was the most fun year maybe ever, maybe even more fun than 20 years ago when they made the Western Conference Finals. But I wonder if some of those people in that front office think that last year was like a 2020-21 Blazer situation where like they kind of had all the dominoes line up. They make the Western Conference Finals. They run it back. And then the next year they get bounced in 5 in the first round.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've heard some things, but like, I don't, maybe they thought that last year was, yes, magical, but also not repeatable. And if you do bring Karl back, who knows how good the team is? Maybe they're better. They're probably better. But what happens when, like, oh my God, Nikhil is the best player on the team right now? We're absolutely going to lose him. Nas Reed towels, frame them because they're not usable anymore because he's gone next summer. Like,
that's the thing, dude. Like, you kind of nailed it in that if there's like a domino effect, and it's hard because as a president of basketball operations, you're not just working year to year. You're looking at like 3 and 5 year arcs and cap tables and all this stuff. And if you run it back, which is what we thought they were going to do until a week before the season, you run it back, and maybe first of all, if you run it back, you aren't going to the NBA Finals. I don't think your team is as good as Oklahoma City. We'll see how the Mavericks have kind of caught fire more recently, but I don't think you run it back and then all of a sudden, boom, you're like getting to the NBA Finals and beating the Boston Celtics in a 6-game series or something. So clearly, Tim Connolly didn't think so either. Because if to your point, if Tim Connolly thought, boy, we are there. Like let's maybe we can make a little tweak here, and maybe we can ship out. Maybe Kyle Anderson goes somewhere else, and we bring in whatever. Like, but we're there. We're there with Ant, Cat, Rudy, peripheral pieces. We are there. Well, of course he would have run it back. Like, it would be wildly foolish on the cusp of winning a championship to not run it back. So the only logical conclusion is he thought what you just said, which is awesome run to the Western Conference Finals, bit of a mirage for where we're actually at. We're much more of like a 46-win team that still needs some work over the next 2 to 3 years. And this is just going to have to be the first painful pill to swallow. And by the way, acquiring Julius and DiVincenzo and the pick from the Pistons, that's not like the end of this trade tree. There might be a Julius trade before the deadline that leads to something. And yeah, as Kyle, for the audio audience, crosses his fingers.
What? Cut that. No, but I also, and I know I speak for you here, and Judd and others, I'm not naive to the fact that when you finally, I always make food analogies, when you finally get to taste like real good steak, like fans did last year, it's tough to swallow that pill of going back to like ramen. And so far this season, going back to the no regrets, but also right now the losers of that deal have to be Minnesota, just because the basketball thing, the fit's not working out. And I was a big clamorer of let's give it 20-ish games. I think at about the 21 game mark is when they had their peak defensive performance. I thought that Warriors loss was really bad. They should have swept them. They had a day off in between. But you're starting to kind of see most of it click, but it's still clicking with the guys like Ant, like Mike, like Nikhil. It does need to click more with Dante and Julius. Jace Frederick and Dane Moore did a really good pod earlier this week, but because you can't just say, like, let's give it 20 more games. At that 41 game mark, like, you probably kind of have to know, because that's right around February 5th or whenever the deadline is. You got to know, like, okay, I know we might have taken a step back to make the next 5 years easier financially and flexible, but I also look at this team and say that, I do think they're still pretty good. Like, I watch OKC and stuff. Like, if they make the right moves and maybe they do make a deal at the deadline, like, there's no reason that this team can't compete with, like, they haven't fallen that far off the map with the OKC and Dallas of the world. So I think these next, what are they, 12 and 11 this morning? I think these next 16, 17 games are going to be really interesting, because now you've kind of had the patience chapter, and now it's about like the results chapter. And if people aren't giving you results by the beginning of February, to your point, maybe the Karl trade is just a means to another trade to a means to an end.
And I feel like we're just like stacking bricks of takes on top here. I'm gonna piggyback off something else you said. You said they're not in that bad a shape. They're 12 and 11, right? But it feels like a lot of people talk about them as if they're 7 and 15, which is what the 76ers are right now. Where Joel Embiid like 2 weeks ago was more interested in finding, who's the mole in the locker room than actually winning games. But if I were to go back to the trade, to the beginning of the season, and I'll actually take record out of it for just a second. If I were to say, hey, the only thing I'm going to tell you after 23 games And mind you, they did not have training camp. I actually think the week of practice this week, and then they're going to get a few more days of practice next week. It's kind of like an in-season mini camp that I'm assuming they practice like probably 3 times. I know it sounds dumb and fanboyish, but like they didn't get to practice much before the season together and to be able to kind of digest the first 20-plus games in practice. But if I were to tell you, hey, 23 games, no training camp with these 2 new guys. They just like threw the ball out and started the season. And they're going to have the 6th best point differential in the Western Conference through 23 games. Take it or leave it. I'd be like, okay. I think I'd rather have that than like whatever disaster lurks behind door number 2. Now, wins and losses, they're sitting tied for 9th, so they'd be in the play-in at 12 and 11. But they're a game and a half behind the 5th seed right now, the Warriors, who they just drubbed less than a week ago. So, like, they're 6th in point differential. Like, they're not 7 and 15, and people are talking about it like it's an epic disaster through 23 games.
Can I piggyback off something you said yesterday?
Please, yeah, stack
because I too have my gripes with Adam Silver, but it would be comical for me to. I mean, the in-season tournament has been a win. We kind of have 4. I don't want to call them smaller markets because Houston and Atlanta, 2 of the Final 4 teams, are large markets, but those teams aren't always talked about as much. But the Final 4 headed to Vegas. I think the in-season tournament year 2 has been a really big success. And yesterday you opined how crabby you were that the Wolves, we just want to, what do I always say? I wanted
the banner.
We want to win one before we die. An in-season tournament.
That's right.
But I had someone kind of plugged in just randomly tell me this, and I never thought of it this way because I'm with you, by the way. Like, when I go to Summer League, man, I'm not just going there to talk to the, like, I want to win Summer League. So in this in-season tournament, if they would have made it to the Final 4, I'm sure I would have been in Vegas, and that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But to your point about practice, I told someone or with the team, I was just like, oh, it sucks you're not in the quarterfinals. It sucks you didn't advance. And they're like, does it? Because we get a built-in week off. We have to play 2 lesser opponents. They ended up adding a Spurs game and a Lakers game. A Lakers game on Friday, which sounds like right now there will be no LeBron James. The Wolves are 6-0, I think, against the Lakers with LeBron, but without him on the court. So you get 2 easier games, and you just get more time to practice. Like, you don't have to travel around and play in these really competitive games. So I want a banner as well, but I also wonder if Finchie and those guys are just like, is it the worst thing in the world that we get a little more time to kind of like iron some stuff out behind the scenes rather than letting it kind of stink in front of everyone on TV? So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I never thought about it like that maybe not advancing isn't the worst thing.
Yeah. So we brought up a few minutes ago just Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to be a free agent and is going to get a much, much bigger paycheck. There's going to be a market for him. Mm-hmm. So I'll preface my question to you with this lineup combination stat. It's been a while since you and I have done a lineup combination discussion here, which is my favorite discussion. There's solutions here. I know that Finch is trying to make like you gotta give some time for like Julius, and Jaden McDaniels is off to a weird start, and so you're trying to balance the evidence that's in front of you with who works together on the court and who doesn't. With, boy, if we actually give this a little more time, then this would be better for the long haul, 82 games. But if you look at the Wolves' best 3-man lineup combinations, net points per 100 possessions, the top 4 3-man lineup combinations all include Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And at the end of that Warriors game that they lost the other night on Sunday, he was their hottest offensive player, and he's pestering on defense so much so that like you wind up leaving Mike Conley on the bench, the organizer, and it kind of, but he has played himself over the course of 2 years. They make that D'Lo for Conley trade, and it was like, oh, and then they got some other, like, who is this other guy with the hyphenated name? This Nickeil guy. Okay. And he kind of rides the bench for a little bit. He goes from a throw-in sort of flyer player in that deal to being a guy that might make, is this a hot take, $20 million a year in free agency? $20 million a year? Like, I feel like it is essential that you re-sign him to a multi-year contract at the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't think I'm like disrespecting his trust or whatever. I just remember that last year when the Wolves had a doubleheader set here and Nickeil was kind of coming on again. It was like in December or January. Nickeil had like this one-liner to me that he was like, I thought I was going to Europe because his career was when he was part of the Mike Conley deal for D'Lo, he was like a throw-in. You had heard that Finch had, I think, quote, pounded the table to get him added into that deal because of their experiences together in New Orleans. But I mean, there's some. I say this to Dane, like I think Chris Finch is having, while he's the best coach in franchise history, and people like Britt and Jim Pete have said that, I think he's having his worst year. There's been some things with late game, even in that second Warriors game. It's like, I know Nikhil's hooping, but that doesn't directly translate to, you don't have to have Mike out there, right? Like you can close small against a Warriors team that closes small. So I thought that was a pretty big hiccup to not have Mike out there when you know your team needs a floor general. But with Nikhil, I mean, again, to the Karl stuff, what if you found out 6 months from now that the team was able to re-sign Nikhil and Naz, who are looked at on this team as like old vets? Nikhil Alexander-Walker is 26 years old. Naz is 25. Like, those guys might be foundational pieces of what you're trying to do. So
they fit the Anthony Edwards age sort of timeline better than Cat did.
And, you know, to the closing lineups or the rotation stuff you're just talking about, Nikhil probably should just close over Jaden in a lot of spots. I still think those guys are like more of a mid-sized SUV and like a pickup truck in terms of how they can defend. Jaden can still give you rim protection. I just think he can guard more positions, but he also can't hit corner threes. So if you want to have enough spacing out there so Ant's not, I mean, the end of that Warriors game was just a debacle offensively. But
you can't really it feels like in these close games, like it's hard to have Jaden. It's hard to have Jaden and Gobert too, because it's like two dudes that can't. And Julius, it kind of depends on Julius, but it feels like when Anthony Edwards is out there, in Sunday night, great example, and 2/5 of the lineup are just like non-options offensively, then he feels the need to go hero ball mode and take contested shots and make bad decisions. And then Julius is such a wild card because I would say like 50% of the time he is nuclear offensively in certain spots, but then like the other 50% he's nuclear the other way, where he's he's going rogue and
Well, and I'm so pro Finch, but one of the biggest things I dislike about how he and his staff handle things is I think they do kind of like closing with how they start, and I just don't like subscribe to that notion. So if you close with Mike and Ant, you have a very potent backcourt that has maturity and playmaking ability and shot making. But then if your front line is Jaden, Julius, and Rudy, that's tough. So that's kind of why, again, it's like, can you close smaller? I think there are some growing trends with like lineups, including Dante in them, that are small ball things. So yeah, it's going to be, and then the kind of the elephant in the room is Naz Reid probably should close too. Like, I think Jace Frederick he's been like 3 minutes in clutch time, which is like, I think if the score was in 5 points with 4 or 5 minutes left. So Finch has made more references post game, and I know you've heard these, where he's like, I didn't do a great job tonight, or I messed that up. I haven't heard him say that before. So I love accountability and transparency, but that's part of this next second quarter of the season is you got to iron some of that stuff out, because you can't still be making coaching decisions or wrong rotation stuff after the deadline, because then those are the guys you got. You got to figure out right now, can we get back to the Western Conference Finals, or can we do some of the stuff with Julius as a starting power forward, or does it need to be Naz? Like, those questions are on my mind now, between now and, let's say, the end of January.
I feel like there's enough evidence, eye test, and even just digging into like the analytics and some of the lineup combos, that less Julius, more Naz, or less Julius and just more batches of players that work better together is better for winning. And it's crazy because like Julius is, I used this analogy or metaphor a couple weeks ago. It's like you've got a band. There's like 5 guys in a band, and he's like the bass player, or maybe he's even the lead guitar player.
Needs more cowbell.
And and it's like there's 4 guys that are playing the song, and then he's just like riffing off something completely separate. And sometimes the riffing sounds amazing with the rest of the band, but then other times you look over and like, bro, like, stop riffing. We're trying to do something over here. But he just kind of operates in Julius world way too often. And I know this is a small sample size, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. When Julius plays 27 minutes or fewer, the Wolves this season are 4-0 with a 25-point average margin of victory in those 4 games. So when it's less Julius, now you could make the case that like maybe they were blowing a team out and when he didn't play as much because it's cigars a time or something. But when he plays 27 minutes or fewer, the Wolves are 4-0 with a 25-point average margin. When he plays 35 minutes or more, the Wolves are 4-7. So smallish sample size, and I'm not saying like don't play him because he's a good basketball player. He's on your team. But if you can like limit the Julius minutes, hey, dude, all right, you're still going to start because whatever, like hierarchy, seniority, egos, all that stuff. But we need, like Naz Reid should be playing more minutes than Julius Randle. And if you need to start Naz Reid to make that happen and have a conversation with Julius's ego, okay. I think you can still make it work. But dude, the Wolves like 20 years ago, not for ego reasons, they would start like Irvin Johnson next to Kevin Garnett at center every night. And some nights he'd play 6 minutes. It'd be like, all right, Irv, nice job. Good job setting the tone there. And now we're going to get into the lineup combinations that are actually going to be relevant tonight.
That's the Kendrick Perkins syndrome in OKC when they would start Kendrick Perkins as like this big, heavy set small,
the tone.
Short 5 next to Ibaka, but then their offensive lineup that would kill was like Ibaka at the 5, and you bring Harden off the bench. So I'm with you. I've heard all the talk about like politics and Julius makes more money and you got to appease his ego. And I think that stuff, whether you like it or not, is fair and accurate. But I also think it's fair and accurate for the first quarter of the season. I think the second quarter of the season has a completely different chapter, a completely different color. And you kind of got to figure out who's back to our original stance of like, this isn't the president of basketball operation doesn't look at what's going on a Thursday. He's looking at what's going on in 2026.
Yeah.
At what point, when you're talking about politics and appeasing people, do you want to appease the guy that might be the better player, the younger player, and a free agent next summer in Naz Reid? So I'm at the point too. And by the way, the Warriors game that we keep referencing on Sunday, I said Chris Finch has had more brain farts this season than maybe ever before, and Julius Randle he froze in the third quarter. They lose the game because of Anthony Edwards. And I know some people want us to bring that up. Like, yeah, we had our own team meeting here at Score North and at Flagrant Howls, and we said we can criticize anyone, even ourselves. And I think in that game they lost it because of Ant. So everyone deserves a little blame pie here. Jaden for never making threes, and except for Nikhil, I guess. But they just got to start to iron this stuff out because, yeah, everyone tells you and I, the West is a bloodbath. The West is a bloodbath. If they win 4 games in a row, they're going to be the 4 seed by Christmas, and they're going to have home court advantage. The same team that's like 2 weeks ago, oh my God, they're not in the play-in. It's like everyone in the West right now outside of OKC is within, I think 2 through 12 are within 5 games. That's 2 weeks of good basketball. So there's a lot to uncover, I think, in this next chapter because there is kind of a soft deadline coming up here with this trade deadline. And then also, too, just like on this side, because people keep asking, once this ownership thing figures out, like, if it goes one way, I think Tim Connelly gets extended right away and he has job security and he has a plan, and then he can kind of build off of that. So fascinating to me, now we're in it. Like now these next 2 months are going to be a really, really big deal for this team this year and for the next 5 years.
One quick thing on Ant, and then we'll get to Random Wolf of the Week here with producer extraordinaire Ross Brendel. All right, he's having a good season, and he is definitely among the 10 to 12 best players in the NBA. And I agree with your take. He just made some bad decisions. Although Chris Finch said he made the right decision on a very high percentage of plays in the fourth quarter. And in general, they went back and looked at the film of all of his like crunch time, clutch time minutes. And last year he was making the correct decision, quote unquote, maybe 50% of the time. And now it's closer to 80%. And I don't know how I don't know if they have like an analytical, like a scout that's charting, and I don't know. But if I were to have told you before the season, so he's gonna almost double his 3-point attempts, and he's gonna go from shooting 36% to 43% on. So he's gonna take a huge step in 3-point make percentage, and he's gonna almost double the volume of threes that he takes. what kind of player do you think he is relative to the league? Wouldn't you have said, oh, what? Dude, he's going to be scoring like 34 points a game. He's going to be a freaking monster. He's going to be like James Harden circa Rockets. He's going to be like Kevin Durant prime. But it's like other areas of his game have either kind of lapsed or are just in the doldrums, because his scoring average is pretty much the same. His rebounding's the same. His assists are actually down. As a playmaker, he's not really. Now, there's been some missed shots off nice passes by him, by Jaden, by Dante DiVincenzo. But it's kind of shocking to me that he has become this crazy good three-point shooter, and the rest of his game has kind of like gone down a half a notch. Am I wild with that take?
I've got a little more time here before we welcome in the man, the myth, the legend, Ross. But when you talk about that and you outline it the way you do, maybe it's because I'm an only child, but I just think back to like how I just got promoted and how I think for Ant, he like got promoted this year, where when you normally get promoted, it's because you're so good at the content you do. And let's say you get promoted to a manager and now you have to do that content while also managing others to be as good at the stuff you were doing as, you know, like, so they're as good at what they do as what you were doing as you do. That was a word salad. I think with Ant, he's thinking more than he's ever had to think before. And he has to, like, I don't think Ant wanted to have to do the thing where he called out his teammates, but he did it in such a great way.
Yeah.
I don't think that's, I mean, he did it so well that you're like, oh, he's a natural. I don't think that's what he wanted to have to do. But now, with no Karl, you're the face of the franchise. So, on the court, you're right. I mean, the numbers would say that he has now blossomed into like a top 8 or 9 guy. But then you kind of look at the production, the wins, loss, all that stuff. It's not really there yet. And I just think he's out there thinking a little bit, especially when he doesn't have Mike out there next to him. Because then it's like, oh, bleep, like I kind of have to be, I use like the Wildcat analogy for football. Like, I think this team has 2 real quarterbacks, like real authentic pocket passer quarterbacks in Mike Conley and ironically Rob Dillingham. And without Rob, you got a bunch of guys that can kind of do the Wildcat thing in Nikhil and Dante and Ant, but they need a real quarterback. And Ant's trying to figure out how to do that. And I think sometimes he's thinking too much and hooping a little too little. So, but he's got to get better at it. I mean, because that's Mike Conley isn't going to be here forever. He's going to be on the last year of his deal starting next season. At some point, it's going to be Rob and Ant, right? For what they invested in Rob. And it's like, Ant, you're going to have to just take on more and more of a burden. So, again, that's another thing to throw into what are you looking for in the second chapter of this season. But I think they weathered a storm pretty well at 12 and 11. But now, you know, I don't care about who the opponent is because you look at it and you're like, oh, they have the Blazers coming up. And it's like, well, those are actually hard games for them. So I don't know who's on the schedule, but they just got to start winning games.
Yeah. Lakers, Spurs, and then I think it's Cat and the Knicks. That's going to be a TNT game in like, is it a week from
It's
today,
a week from tonight on TNT. I'm sure that ticket will will run you some money. But that's also going to be one of the best. That's going to be one of the best regular season games in Target Center history. So if you're looking for a gift for a loved one, now might be the time to just splurge on some $900 upper bowl seats.
And then the tension of the TNT crew that the Wolves kind of hate, and Cat, it's going to be
Friday morning,
amazing.
One fan base is going to celebrate like Pat Bev on the scorer's table. Like the Wolves will be like, we did it without you, or they're going to try to find Tim Conley. Just be like, what did you do?
All right, we're going to get to a random Wolf of the week here in just a second after we celebrate
There
Park
he is.
Dental.
There's my guy.
Hey, who's got a big smile because he found a new dentist? This guy right here. Who's got 2 thumbs and a new dentist? This guy. So yeah, I was without a dentist there for like a year. My old dentist retired, leaving me dentistless. And so some friends and coworkers said, Park Dental, hey, great spot. Over 50 years caring for and cleaning teeth in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin. And so if you're like me, and there's locations, by the way, all around the metro area, chances are there's somewhere within minutes from where you live or work. So schedule your checkup at parkdental.com, parkdental.com. Also, KS Drywall had a chance to put a couple adult beverages back with our friends from KS Drywall about a month and a half ago. They're big supporters and fans of what we're doing here at Score North, and they provide full drywall, plaster repair, interior painting services, popcorn ceiling texture removal. No repair job is too big or too small. If it's a new construction, they're in. If it's a small emergency repair, they're in. hit them up, ksdrywall.com. And on the popcorn ceiling, if you've got one of those older model, like 1960s or 70s homes, and you're looking to sell it someday, you can maybe increase the value and just the aesthetic if you have KS Drywall get rid of that popcorn ceiling texture. So ksdrywall.com to schedule a free estimate. All right, let's get him in here. Producer extraordinaire and the keeper of Random Wolf of the Week, Ross Brendel.
I have no idea why I'm boxing today, but I am.
He's just fired up for the Random Wolf of the Week.
Good to see you.
Great to see you. You look very refreshed. You look sharp. It's a different hat choice. I was thrown off by that, but I appreciate it.
Good news in the influencer world. I came out of there. There are a couple local companies on the island of Kauai that sponsor this podcast subtly. So I want to give them a shout out, like the Kauai Surf Company. But I came back with 12 more hats. I'll send you the picture, Ross. I had 40 farmer hats on this bed, and it felt like an intervention because my wife had set them up, and she was like, "Hey, can we come look at this?" She's like, "You got to figure this out, man. You got one head. You don't need 40 hats." So
you need 7 colors of the same hat, Kyle, or can we scale down to 3, honey? Maybe we can.
But on a quick aside, I know you both agree with me. Once you find something that fits, like I just got my first Unreal hoodie, but like once you find something that fits, I just want every color of that thing, that hat, that sweatshirt.
Yes.
Because I am a simpleton. I do not want to have options. I am Steve Jobs. I don't want to have. I just want all black,
19
hoodies.
black T-shirts. Yes.
That's
so you can innovate.
And you never want any of them to go bad, but you inadvertently wear them out because you wear them into the ground. But that also becomes a part of the comfort factor.
Yeah, like the thing that has the armpit holes. You're like, but it still fits really well. Do I want to
fits.
transition to the new one that's the carbon copy and one of 7? But
I had an embarrassing moment when we were in Vegas for Thanksgiving, and I have these like athleisure sweatpants that I literally will wear like for sure traveling, but like 4 days a week if I can. I'll wash them like every other day. And what I didn't realize until I got off the plane and got back to the hotel we were checking in, there was a huge hole right in the crotch. The entire morning at the airport. I don't know if they gave way in the washing machine the night before, but old Mackey
drive through
sitting at the
been there,
sitting at the gate, legs crossed. Oh, what's that family looking at over there across? Why are they looking at me weird?
You usually got to pay for that in Vegas, so that was nice of you.
So okay, Ross
Free
has
show.
the Random Wolf of the Week. All time, Kyle has a 26-13 lead over me. For this season, Kyle has 3 wins to my 1. For year 2, the 4 Random Wolves have been Kevin Garnett, Reggie Jordan, Randy Brewer, and Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones was the first ever heat check victory. We get a heat check guess after Ross's first clue.
That's why I was on vacation.
Kyle
as soon as I
nailed
got
it.
it right, Phil texted me, goes, all expenses paid to Hawaii on the company. So I was like, all right, let's do it.
So Ross is going to throw out some clues. We can shout out guesses whenever we want, and the heat check guess is separate from the 3 strikes we each get. And here we go. Let's rock and roll.
Here we go, gentlemen. This Random Wolf of the Week is 34 years old. 34.
Okay.
Doesn't quite have the same ring as 45.
How many people, all due respect, I shouldn't even say this,
Yeah, you should.
even know that reference?
I was just, the moment you said that, I went, I'm going to guess if you watch this
Kyle,
podcast
do you know
or
what
listen.
that reference is or no?
It sounded familiar when Ross said it, but now I'm kind of
The Wolves used to run games on 45,
Yes.
right? Back in the day.
Oh,
If you
45.
live in Minnesota and you watch or listen to this podcast, I think you'll get that.
Hubbard
at
owned and
times-
operated. 45, let's go.
At times I play bingo at a couple different places, Phil. And both places, when they draw whatever number 45 is, they'll be like, 45. And the crowd will go, ha, 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 ha. So there we go. KSTC.
Oh, we get a
channel
heat check,
45.
guys.
You do get a heat check. Phil, you can go first this time.
Oh. 34. So I'm going to do some math. Johnny Flynn.
Ooh.
Ooh.
All-time great smile. Not a correct answer.
I don't know. This isn't as fun as a couple weeks ago.
You say that now till you get it right.
Dude, if you get another
No, I'm between 2 guys, but I don't know I know one of them is 34, but the other one might be 34.
Phil.
I have another one.
Let's do 2 heat checks quick. I'm gonna
Okay,
say my first
go
one.
ahead.
Torian Prince.
Taurean Prince, not correct, but he does know how to get a rebound and the meaning of rebounding.
Bonus holiday season heat check quick, Phil, because I got one more.
Ricky Rubio.
Phil. No, but I like the name. Did I get you for a split second? Did I get you?
Yeah, I was hopeful.
Ross, one more, and then you can give us clues. But they just said it yesterday because he's in the news. Is it Jimmy Butler?
It is not Jimmy Butler. We play
Dude, how about that?
on.
Dude, Shams reported the thing, right?
Right.
And then
Right,
Bernie Lee, his agent, comes in like, he just clowned Shams. Apparently the same thing happened with Jimmy's MCL injury from, was it last year?
Yeah.
And then it turns out like 5 hours later, the Heat announced, yeah, it's an MCL injury. He's having surgery. Okay, agent guy, take a deep breath.
He's a unique cat. Everyone
Yeah.
in that group is unique. Anyway, Flagrant Howls.
This random wolf of the week was named to the All-NBA second team, obviously in the 2010s. If you're doing a little bit of math here, that part should make some sense. This random wolf of the week named to the All-NBA second team in the 2010s.
Oh, man. Wait.
I'm gonna do a quick spot check here. I want to make sure I didn't butcher that.
Oh, you might have just given us a bad clue.
No, I don't think I did. NBA rookie all second team.
Rookie all second.
I knew I
okay.
left
I was gonna
something out.
say,
So rookie all second team.
What in the
Apologies on
Benjamin
that.
Button happened here. Okay,
How about that though? Realizing the mistake and calling an audible. Good work by me. I'll pat myself on the back.
we don't have a
all
lot of that
rookie.
in 2024.
Second team.
Accountability.
Okay.
This random wolf of the week also should not shock you was a first round draft pick. First round draft pick named to the all rookie second team in the 2010s, currently 34 years old.
Derek Williams.
Ooh, I like that guess too, but not correct.
Right, that's the first official
That's the-
wrong guess, right? One strike.
That is correct. The player is not correct, but your counting is correct. This random wolf of the week played in 646 career NBA games.
It's not that many games for a guy that was first round pick, and well, if it's a Wolves first round pick,
That's a lot of games.
You said what? 660 what?
646 career NBA games.
That's like almost 7.5 seasons. But okay, keep going.
Wait, did
This
we do
ra-
this? Did we do this guy? Sorry, I'm just going to do a control F for. If
Would
we
you
did
like
this
me to
guy.
go on, or are you ready to
No,
make
you can go
a
ahead.
guess?
Sorry, I don't want to
Hey,
hide.
keep going.
This random wolf of the week played for 7 NBA franchises, one of them twice. This random wolf of the week played for 7 NBA franchises, one of them twice. If you're wondering why I giggled and why the formatting of that question was not great, I just now realized I am obnoxiously far away from the camera. So
The audience was.
they probably had no clue, but I'm just
paralyzed
realizing
by that thought.
I feel like I'm sitting in a different room. Apologies.
Do I want to rifle off my second guess and just? Okay.
Wesley Johnson.
Were you going to go with Wesley Johnson, Phil?
He was on my list, but
Because we could have controversy here.
no. Go ahead. Is it right?
But we don't have controversy. We play
Oh,
on.
wait. Oh,
Oh wow, dude.
Got them both. Got them
almost
both.
got me canceled. Can't play the damn buzzer if I get it wrong. I wonder.
Wow.
Okay. Well, now I
This-
feel better. Phil, you got to guess one.
Well,
This
now
random-
it's the second team all rookie is what's got me here.
This random wolf of the week played forward and center in the National Basketball Association.
Okay, I would have been wrong then on my.
Oh, well, you're welcome for the help.
People are getting it now though because 2010s like all rookie teams, the Wolves had a guy like every year, but I think we've guessed most of them. Phil, I don't want to help you, but there's still a couple. bullets in the
there's
chamber.
definitely. There's a couple guys, but we're kind of in a tight window for when this player was drafted.
Right. Okay.
This random wolf of the week gentleman is a current development coach for an NBA franchise. A current development coach for an NBA franchise.
7 teams across 646 games. It's crazy.
I'm just looking up our top 100 list. I got nothing.
I will say this. This is not an official clue.
Okay.
But this player, everything about the player is quite random because not a lot of it makes sense. And when I give you the name, I think that will make more sense when we get there.
Okay.
This random wolf of the week averaged 13 points per game in his NBA career.
Okay, that's
not a throwaway player. That's a contributor.
And there's a guy that fits. Well, no, not the 7 teams, and he was a 2nd round pick. So no.
No. He was a 1st round pick. Right?
I don't know.
Was he, Kyle?
No, wait, hold on. I wrote this down. He was a 1st round pick. Is
the guy I'm thinking of? I'm pretty sure was the 1st pick in the 2nd round for a very strategic reason.
I have a guess, but it flies in the face of the games played, I think. Is it Gorgie Jang?
It is not Gorgie Jang.
I don't think he scored that many points.
But he is a player development coach.
So Kyle, I believe, has one guess to give.
He does.
Has
And by
to
the
be
way,
right
if Kyle hits that last guess and is wrong, then I win automatically.
Correct.
And I have 2 more guesses.
Phil may be just kneeling on his guesses to see what happens here. This random wolf of the week spent the bulk of his career with the Detroit Pistons. Detroit basketball.
Oh, they had a 10. Oh, my God. Oh.
I'll give you one, and then I'm going to dunk on you. I'll give you one, and then I'm going to get this.
You have it?
No, you get one chance. I am the holiday spirit. You have one chance.
Wow, Kyle.
They signed him to 2 10-day contracts.
Yes, they did. You got 5 seconds.
Oh, my God.
4,
Dude, it's yours.
3. The Moose himself.
Monroe, Greg Monroe. Greg Monroe.
Kyle, you would have had it if you didn't celebrate, drop the ball at the 3-yard line.
Into the end zone.
Yeah.
He Deion'd into the end zone.
That ball got knocked away from behind.
Damn it.
Greg
Okay.
Monroe. Did he play for the Bucks?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe 6 years, 5 years ago? Like 2000, was he a Buck in 2019?
He went Detroit for 5 years, Milwaukee for 3, then Phoenix, Boston, Toronto, Boston.
I sat in a booth not next to him, literally, but it was my family. And then in the booth next to us in the 3rd ward of Milwaukee was 7-foot Greg Monroe. And I don't know, a couple people from his family just sharing brunch together in Milwaukee.
God, I should not have been nice. I'm disgusted. That's what I get for helping out a friend.
To me, it's not
Greg
even
Monroe.
that you were nice. It's that you didn't just say the name right away and you were inadvertently giving Phil clues to hop in.
When Phil said there are 2 10 days, I was like, oh, that man is in trouble. He has no idea. I shouldn't have put the
But
Moose
they
antlers
did it.
out
They
there.
did 2
Yeah,
10
they did,
days
yeah.
with him, right? Yeah.
They signed him to a 10-day, and I think he played that first day. He flew in at 3 o'clock, hit the Mall of America, and then played 7 minutes.
My sources tell me, a.k.a. the interwebs, that year he actually had 4 10-day contracts, 3 with the Wolves and 1 with the Jazz.
Those 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he played half the season on 10-day contracts. Good for him.
We were about to get really deep into the random clues, by the way. So good job getting getting that.
I have to use this platform selfishly for one thing because I was talking to Phil about this, Ross, before. If you are a Minnesota Vikings fan going to Vikings Seahawks next Sunday, the 22nd before Christmas, hit me up on Twitter or X or Blue Sky or Instagram because I want to tailgate with. First time, Phil, I'm going to see the Vikings play in person since I was, I think, 22 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm excited
Dude,
for Vikings Seahawks. Come on out. Come to the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be wonderful. But if you're going to the game, hit me up.
Love it. You're going to have a blast. For producer Ross, he's Kyle. I'm Phil. That's Greg Monroe. And this is a Timberwolves Lifestyle Podcast.